Hi, welcome to The Pursuit of Truth. If this sounds different, it's because I'm recording it straight on my phone and not Anchor FM. Because twice now, the first time I recorded a whole 11 minutes and it didn't upload. And it's not the first time I've had this problem. And now it just went off in the middle of me starting. So I'm just going to record with my own phone so I know that I don't have to keep repeating myself. Alright, so I was... me and my wife were on the train. It was a busy packed train, you know where the door bits are, that was packed, so we moved down and we found ourselves in the first class section, and there was another lady there and we were laughing about like whether we're even allowed to stand in the first class section, you know, because there might be some Jobsworth inspector that will come along and tell us off, and then we were just, me and my wife were just showing how stupid it is, how sheep-like people are, how we're taught, programmed, schooled, whichever word you want to use, into doing things that are crazy. It's a chair, it's a seat, like any other. Yeah, maybe it might be a bit more plush than the standard ones, but it's just a seat. And these seats, 6, 8 seats or whatever it is, just left empty, while we're all standing around because we're too scared to sit on them, because you have to have a ticket, you have to pay more money for that special seat. And just, you know, that on the wall it has, you get charged £20, or the difference between your ticket, I guess they'll charge you whichever is greater. And then it mentions that you can get a conviction. Yes, you can get a conviction for sitting in a seat. This is the world we live in. Don't tell me this world isn't crazy and there's lots of stupid things that we all believe in and follow. But there is. I mean, how can you get a conviction for sitting in a seat? But we all accept it, and that's the thing that really stops us from breaking that rule. If it was just £20, we might just sit in the seat and take the risk. But people will think twice, like the lady that was saying that when she saw that bit, that's what stopped her from, you know, she edged out of the area. But then another couple came later and they sat in the seat, and I just thought how stupid it is that we're just standing around when we could just sit here just because of this first class thing. And then I was thinking about how Labour were in my lifetime, you know, through Tony Blair, evil Tony, and them, they was 10 years or whatever they were in for, and they never corrected this thing. You know, you would have thought, you know, they always talk about, you know, classless divisions and all that kind of stuff. You know, why they didn't sort that out? Why didn't they eradicate the first class section of these trains? Probably because they used to sit on them. Well, it's like they didn't do proportional representation, something they used to go on and on about because they could never win an election. And then the minute they get in, they didn't change it. Despite, I'm sure it was in their manifest, but anyway, that's another matter. I don't want to get into politics, but it just shows you how we can be taught to do things that make no sense, and there would be people who would champion, you know, like the ticket inspector, although there was one actually passed us and didn't say anything. But, you know, there were, you know, if we had a debate about this, there would be some people that would say, yeah, we should have first class. And, you know, I'm sure even me, I'm like, in the past, I used to be the person who believed in rules, that, you know, this is how it is, you just have to do it, you just have to follow it, because, you know, without rules, there's disorder. But, you know, without thinking that, you know, so if someone sets crazy rules, you're still going to follow them? How stupid is that? But it just shows how what we're capable of believing. We would just stand there for 40 minutes rather than sitting down, despite paying to be on the train. So the other thing I was going to talk about was Coronation Street. I know I mentioned this already, and Jamie Brown mentioned it also. Right, that's where I heard it first. So I actually saw the episode he was talking about, I think, and it was the friend of, I still don't remember her name, oh god. Anyway, so her friend has she was taking natural or alternative means, and she's passed away. And the interesting thing about it is how they tackled the story. The fact that they brought the priest in, whose name I've also forgotten, as the authority figure, just to make us, because I knew they were going to gatekeep this idea, because she stopped chemo and started doing this alternative thing, and at the end of the episode it looked like she's back at the hospital now, scared because her friend's passed away, and that now she's going to want chemo again. But the interesting thing is she has a conversation with the priest, and he breaks his confidence, even though in the past he's refused to do that. But for this, he does break his confidence and tell Daniel, I remember one name, the boyfriend of, I keep thinking of Janine, but it's not Janine. That's EastEnders. So he breaks his confidence, which a priest is not meant to do, and tells him that she's stopped chemo. But it's just a way that, because if you're watching this, and say you're questioning should I be taking chemo and radiation because there's such a low percentage of success, and in this soap they're talking about was very influential in the UK. I think still Coronation Street is the most watched programme. So that's what I'm saying. It's interesting that it's the priest that's then brought in to talk to her about it. She doesn't change her mind, but the fact is that he argues that that people have been, that science knows what it's doing and it's researched all this stuff. But it amazes me, thinking how he should know better than that, and then she makes fun of him for him believing in something that can't be proven, i.e. God. But the fact is, because he's there, he was the authority figure, just to make sure that people watching this wouldn't, would definitely think twice about alternative means. So as I expected, the episode is sort of a gatekeeping exercise. There's no real sort of factual, I suppose it's a soap, what do you expect? Anyway, so I just thought I'd add that bit. So the other thing, I saw a few films, I'm just going to quickly mention. One was Smallfoot. It's an animation film, for kids really, I guess. It's these Bigfoot creatures. One of them finds Smallfoot, which is a human, and they don't believe, the rest of them don't believe in that, because they've been taught about there's this guy who wears this cloak of tablets, a bit like Moses and his stones. I'm sure that's what it's referencing. And these stones tell them everything, and if it's not on these stones, then it doesn't exist. So it's basically about the lie of history and the lie of belief. It looked like it was sort of maybe an anti-religious film in a sort of way, sort of saying you shouldn't just believe in that, you should go and discern and look for yourself. So that'd be the interesting thing, whether the people who made this film, whether they will then acknowledge that when people like me, or the future people, and there's loads of people on YouTube as well, that question what we're told from NASA, what we're told from our schools, our teachers, our politicians, whether they'll be happy that that's what basically their film is saying. That I'm sure they would say, no, this is just a kid's film, it's just about that, or they might just stick it to religion and say, yeah, that's why you shouldn't believe in religion, but you should believe in science. But it's the same thing. If the core message of the film is discerning for yourself, and people not just believing because someone else tells them that is what is. So yeah, I thought that was quite interesting that this is coming out. It seems like they're drip feeding little bits that we're seeing now, or maybe I'm just aware of it now. So the other film I saw was Indian Horse. That was about Canada's treatment of the Indigenous people. And it wasn't as hard-hitting as I thought it was going to be. I thought it would be a bit more. I thought it was going to be about America, actually, but it was about Canada, and it was sort of showing how the church there were taking the kids, and they were there was a scene where it looked like they were bleaching the children to sort of make them more white, which in a way that was what they were doing in a non-physical way, because they were trying to make them interested in hockey. And this kid, he was against it, and then his friend kills himself, and sorry for the spoiler alert, I should have given that. And he gets interested in hockey, and then he gets swept away. He forgets that, of his indigenous people, and becomes like a Westerner or an American, whatever you want to call it. And that was their whole point, was to indoctrinate them from not being the indigenous people, but to being Americans, and get them into that system so they could, I guess, get rid of the indigenous people in a non-violent way, like that was done in the America. And then at the end, it had about there was a trial and reconciliation thing that happened, a bit like, I guess they got that from South Africa, where they would talk about, I think you can talk about your crimes or what's been done to you without fear of retribution, i.e. criminal charges. I don't know if that was the same as it was in South Africa, but the only problem is that's great and everything, but what about giving them back their country then? There's no point of saying, I murdered loads of these tribes and I'm really sorry about it, and please forgive me, and let's live together happily. What a minute. Whose country is this? You're going to apologise? That's a bit like me going into someone's house and raping someone or killing them, and then saying, I'm really sorry about raping and killing 2 members of your family, but I'm still going to stay in the house. It's funny how when you put it like that, you can see it clearly. When it's a country, you suddenly don't see it, because you've got these hundreds of years of believing this country is yours. And then the other film I saw was First Man, which is Ryan Gosling, and that was about Neil Armstrong, or the first. Well, it was about mainly Neil Armstrong and his involvement in Gemini and Apollo. So it's interesting that there's a lot of these space movies coming out now. And I think there's a series called The First as well. I don't know if that's about... I think that's about Mars, actually, but that's a sci-fi thing. So, yeah, it's interesting there's a lot of these things out. It's interesting how it was showing all the accidents that happened on Earth. He nearly died trying to land a lunar-type module thing, and others died in a capsule and a test. I believe those are the ones that they talk about on the moon conspiracy, that maybe were a little bit wiser to what was going on, and that's maybe why they were killed. I know that assumption but it wasn't mentioned in the film, of course. But yeah, all the accidents that happened, and I know Neil Armstrong sort of said, we want all the accidents to happen here, so none of them happen on the moon. But the problem is that obviously an accident that happens on the Earth, we're all going to witness it. So if a rocket goes up and it blows up, like the Challenger, there's nothing you can do about that. But it's just strange that there's been no deaths when it comes to going to space on the Mir, on the International Space Station, on all the things that they've done in so-called space, all the moon landings. No one died. I know you're going to... Obviously there's a Challenger, but that's because we could see that with our eyes. We don't know if that was real, what really happened there. But... what I mean is you can't, if it is a fake, you can't, well, yeah, you know what I'm trying to say. And then if, obviously, other people talk about Apollo 13, a lot of people thought that was done on purpose, just so that they'd have a reason to stop going into space, it seems plausible, because it did seem to stop after that, and then they lost all the data and the trajectory data, and they wiped over the video or the film of the moon mission. I wonder what they wiped it over with. Episode of Dallas, perhaps. So, or X-Files. So yeah, I've gone off on a tangent and forgot what I was talking about. Yeah, so it's just strange that there was no deaths or anything, which, considering how many there were on Earth, you would expect at least one, maybe, in how many years of so-called space exploration, from the Apollo to the Mir to the International Space Station. And the other thing it made me think about is I wish someone could come up with a moon curve calculator. I know we have the Earth one, but I was thinking the moon is a lot smaller, so surely when they took photos, wouldn't that curve come up, or with their own eyes, wouldn't they have seen the curve? Because on the Earth, which is, isn't it, it's a lot bigger than the moon, isn't it? And the curve is, when I was Googling curve calculator, if this is factually true, obviously remember I'm using information that's given to me, so who knows whether it's true or not. It's because it's based on numbers of the circumference and Pythagorean and all that kind of math jiggery pokery. That per mile we're supposed to be able to see well, we'll not see, but there's an 8-inch curve per mile, which I guess with the human eye you can't see because it's so less, especially over the distance. But I was thinking on the moon, wouldn't that be a lot bigger? So, you know, wouldn't it be more noticeable? Whereas the pictures all look pretty flat, isn't it? Like, well, a bit like the film, which was probably done on a sound stage, wasn't it? Inside a bunker or wherever they film these things. You know what I mean? On a set. That's what I'm trying to say. Of course, I was talking to my daughter about it, and I was saying that if you see like Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey, filmed in 1968 or before then, but released in '68, you can see how it's possible to, that film, it still stands up now for its special effects. That how it would be possible to fake. Well, when Kubrick faked space in that film, if that's the way you can look at films, they are lies. So he did fake whole film about space travel to Jupiter, wasn't it? I think Keir Dullea goes up to Jupiter. So I mean, in ships, and that it looks really, when you look at it, it probably looks a little bit better than the moon landing grainy stuff. And that was, done before. But some of it's fairly accurate, though, isn't it? So anyway, the other thing that's making me think of is because I was looking about, flat surfaces, and I came across, I think it's Robert Matthews probably know more about this than me. It was Bonneville Salt Flats in Utah, America. So it's interesting on their website, the catchphrase they have for Utah for this Bonneville Salt Flats is, imagine a place so flat you seem to see the curvature of the planet. Let me just say that one more. Imagine a place so flat you seem to see the curvature of the planet. Brilliant, isn't it? Huh? Well, so you've got this really flat place, and I assume it is flat. I mean, I know that sometimes we call things, because it may appear a little bit flat, so that's why they've called it flat. So it might not necessarily be flat. I was trying to find out whether there was any evidence scientifically that I don't know how you would measure to make sure it's flat, but I'm just thinking if it is, because it's meant to be 6,000 miles, I mean, someone better draw that in on the circle, this huge great line of flatness, because how does that happen? And then I was seeing that some people were saying that, previously they were saying that the human eye can see 30 miles, and that's why they can't live on a flat Earth, because you'd see all these things. And they were saying that if you had a candle 30 miles away and it was in the dark and there was no obstruction, you'd be able to see it. And people would have argued that and believed that. I saw it on many sites, that 30 miles was quoted many times above, to when I saw a new article from the Daily Mail where they had reported that researchers had done this test to try it out, and they found out that the human eye can only see 1.6 miles. So you wouldn't be able to see that 30 miles away. Of course, paradoxically, the problem is that if you can see 30 miles, then definitely you should be able to see that curvature, isn't it? Because over 30 miles, how much curvature should you be able to see? Especially if you're on those salt flats. Yeah? If the salt flats are not really flat, even though they're called flat, and they're actually curving around the Earth, if you stood there and you were able to see 30 miles, you should definitely be able to see a lot of curve. I mean, people should drop off quite quickly, no? But that's where they use to do speed tests, isn't it? Which I assume they usually pick a place that's very flat to do that, because it makes it easier to do, I would have thought. So, yeah, the problem is like when you Google things, you only get a certain amount of information. You get a lot of rubbish as well, and it's difficult to find like factual information, even if you search Wikipedia, which is usually monitored by people. But I don't know how you would scientifically, prove if the 6,000 miles of the Bonneville salt flats are actually flat, as in, you know, they're all the same level. Because if that was the case, then surely that puts to bed this idea of a curved Earth. I mean, that's impossible then, because how do you explain that? Anyway, yeah. But the other thing that was interesting is this, that I stumbled across when looking for this, is that where people would have argued and believed this, that the eye can see 30 miles, and as long as no one does any research and actually checks it and counters that, people, that will be, yeah, that's fact, that's what we have. And then when someone else comes along and actually tests it and says, no, you can only see 1.6, I'm sure people will still challenge that, and people will still cling on to the 30 miles. Anyway, I just thought it was quite interesting there. Right, take care, sorry, my voice is hurting me. Take care, take it easy, God bless, and peace.